today we have a very special guest, one of my great friends, lifelong friends, in the incredible Angela Hucles. She plays for the United States of America, 2 Olympic gold medalists, 2-time World Cup bronze medalists. We played together because we met being teammates with the Boston Breakers back in WSA days. We won't date ourselves too far. That's on the field. Then she decides to retire. Is the past president of Women's Sports Foundation, 2009 Humanitarian of the Year for U.S. Soccer Foundation, past president of Women's Sports Foundation. The list goes on, but most importantly and most recently, founding investor for Angel City and a mother of 2 of the most adorable kids you will ever see. And thanks for being here today.
AK, always a pleasure. Always love talking to you, my friend.
I feel like this is just a joyous time because I think as players, we always talked about wanting to have an impact in the game. And here we are. You are a founding member of Angel City. Wow. Did you ever think that was going to happen?
I don't think so. However, it was probably a couple years ago where I just kind of threw out there, I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to own a soccer team, professional soccer team, women's soccer team one day. And I totally forgot I said that. And so obviously with my belief system and putting things out to the universe and how things can come about and manifest and putting yourself in the right place and putting in the work. But I think it's just an incredible honor to be amongst many investors with Angel City FC, with incredible backgrounds, stories, and all people, I think, with the common theme of really trying to make an impact in the sport, in the game for women, not just in women's football, but just generally speaking, and really using a tremendous platform to grow the game.
We talk about platforms. Let's go back to your playing days. What's your most memorable, and the thing is, I hated when people used to ask me that because there's so many, but what's the first one that pops into your mind now of a memorable moment of you as a player?
Yeah, I think so many. I mean, I still see myself sometimes with that, the picture when I first started playing, when I was 7 years old. I had pigtails pigtails like little barrettes and things in my hair, just loving the purity of the game and the sport and running around that field, eating orange slices at halftime. And I think I do hold on to that. Obviously, I had many years after that in the sport, but I think that's what I still hold on to. And I think that's why I'm still involved in the sport, because I understood and I felt, I still have that feeling as a 7-year-old little girl about how meaningful that was, how exciting, how much passion I had, the enjoyment, the competition, and being able to have that environment to just go out and compete as a young person of color, little girl, when I was playing with all boys. And I think that's definitely the vision that pops out when I first think about that question. And then the next one takes me to fast forward many years to 2008 Olympics, and standing on that podium, winning the gold medal. So, and that was toward the end of my career. So I definitely have the beginning and the end of the playing part of my career when you ask a question like that, for sure.
What's interesting is you talk about 2008 Olympics, and most people will see, I think, 4 goals. You were just a pivotal part of that team. But I think it's also so important for people to know that sometimes your greatest highs come after your greatest lows. Take us a little bit through that journey and the lessons that you learned that helped you become the player that you were in that moment for your country.
Yeah, and I mean, as you know, it's such an interesting profession, right? And to be a player on, technically, especially at that time, the best team in the world, and understanding your role. I traditionally, had come from a background of being the starter, being perhaps, probably one of the best, if not the best player on the team in some of my teams, my youth teams. And then when you get to the national team environment and international play, I mean, you're in a different pool and pond there. And I think understanding my role within that team, and knowing where I could add value, but also just the preparation. I mean, always needing to be prepared no matter what the circumstance was, and not knowing what the circumstances could turn out to be. And so for 2008, I definitely was someone who was getting playing time, but was typically coming off the bench as a role player, as a reserve. And so to then have that opportunity to start in the Olympics, as a forward, where I was traditionally playing midfielder, I was put in a different position and was being called to do something for the team. And it was a preparation that ultimately helped, get me to that point. And that was preparation from my teammates and the environment that was created. That was a preparation from my coaches and the training staff. Everyone playing their part to help everyone be the best possible version of themselves when they hit that field. And a lot of people don't know what kind of happened leading up to that 2008 Olympics, where, the year before was 2007 in the World Cup. And I was, my favorite statistic from that was I was one of two players that didn't see a minute of playing time in the World Cup from the U.S. team. And I say that because it was, it was a tough year for us as a team collectively, having just to deal with some internal dynamics during that tournament. And so really asking myself if I wanted to stay in sport as a professional, and, was that my time to go ahead and exit and retire? Was the writing on the wall? And so I had to do a lot of internal dialogue and reflection. And I will always hold on to that time of my life because it taught me so much about, one, understanding yourself and what you have and the belief in yourself, and maybe some of the thoughts and things that you might hear around you, and, filtering that and taking what can be useful to you to get to your ultimate goal and dream. But I was at a point where I was contemplating retiring and quitting, and to understand that I had to let go of certain things and just get out in the field, compete, and just have fun, just to enjoy the purity and the love of the game again, as I did as that 7-year-old little girl. And that really shifted for me into being able to just show up and compete and train and let go of all the rest, and put me in a good position to, ultimately help my team in that Olympics. So for me, it was, if you really believe that there's more left, or there's something that's out there for you, to keep going, because once you're in that hard spot, because everybody has them, right? We all know everybody has adversity, challenges, and sometimes you just need to keep going and get yourself out of there, keep your head above water, if it's the last thing you have to do. And it's not easy, and it's challenging, it's hard, but, understanding that reward is on the other side. And for me, that was one of the greatest lessons I took from that time.
Timely message. I mean, if we think about where we are now and what we're going through, and the realities that everybody is going to have a COVID story and a reason why they should feel defeated. But listening to you, I mean, it's a reminder of the importance of just, first of all, staying connected on something bigger than yourself, because in a sense, it's like we all are going after our Olympic gold medal. Yeah. But then also just, it's a powerful message. One of the things is we always talk about seeing it to believe it. We have a very diverse confederation, and the importance of, being a woman of color and, growing up. I know you and I have spoken about this so much. We didn't have those heroes to look up to that looked like us and talked like us. You see the success of the Jamaican women's national team going to the World Cup. That's helped the conversation in the Caribbean. But how important, or is there a story that you want to share where, it wasn't about the wins and losses, it was about you just going after the best version of yourself, where you impacted somebody because you are a woman of color?
It's always about the journey. It's always about the process. I mean, that's where the growth happens. That's where you learn about yourself and really the world around you. You can't just focus on, for me, if it was just getting to that podium and chasing that gold medal as the medal itself, right? Because what I learned through that is something that I will hold on to for the rest of my life. So it is important to see things, but I also think that sometimes it's not physically seeing it, it's also seeing it in your mind, seeing something that may not exist and believing that it can come to life, right? And that you can help be a part in creating that. And I think, for people of color, especially, I mean, we aren't going to see a whole lot of ourselves in a lot of things that maybe we want to do. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So we can't let that be something that's going to prevent us from achieving and getting in our way. I mean, there wasn't a professional women's soccer team in the United States when I was even in college. It wasn't until I was graduating college, and then the following year I graduated college, that the first women's pro soccer league started. So, we can't just rest on seeing a model and example. Sometimes we have to be that model and be the person to create the pathways. And I think that's the time that we're really living in. So for me, I think it's also being very intentional with the things that I do, with the organizations that I align myself with, so that, now having had the experiences that I've had, because I know I'm fortunate, I know that so many people have not had the type of experiences, especially in sport, that I was allowed to have. And so being intentional about creating the pathways for others, because it's such a powerful tool, football and sports in general, and the lessons that you can learn. So, it's very important for me as a woman of color, to make sure that I am thinking about that next generation and the generations to come.
You talk about football being powerful in so many different ways, and it empowers so many people to be who they're meant to be. Can you talk about, from your perspective, because you went from a player into leadership positions, and now, I mean, as a founding owner, what is the power of the game for young girls and women?
Just seeing the power of football, how it connects everybody and unites people. And we've seen this time and time again throughout history about sport, and during civil unrest or world unrest, and how it really can bring countries and people and communities together just by watching the power sport and watching the Olympics, watching world events and sporting events. And so, I think that's something where, us even having this conversation right now, and the history that we've had, and the relationship that we've had, and that was football bringing us together, and being able to experience sport as teammates, but also, I've traveled the world, and being able to communicate with a complete stranger just by starting to juggle a soccer ball in a different world, and having not just little girls but little boys come up to me, and having the ability to connect with someone through that soccer ball. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to be able to do, to see, and, having lasting relationships through the power of sport. Life skills are so many things that, I think it can really do in terms of the power. But, when we look at specifically women of color as well, and just this time, being able to use something that is powerful, that is fun, that can break down barriers and kind of help foster communication, that is power in and of itself.
You just spoke a little bit about it, but to be specific, what is the role of sport in development of girls?
Yeah, and this, a lot of, obviously we've experienced it ourselves personally, but a lot of research has been done around this. And I learned a lot of it through the Women's Sports Foundation, the organization that was founded by Billie Jean King. But, especially during a young girl's adolescence period, being able to have safe activities, the physical elements and components. Obviously, we know, being physically active and going out and playing sports, it's great for your health, your physical health. But there are also so many different psychological components and mental health components that are very positive through sport. Being able to, physically perform and play in sport, if you're doing that at the beginning of the day, the brain functions better, the blood flow. So you actually can do better in school and your studies, and your attention span is increased. So, there are literally reports and scientific data to support and back up the positive benefits that sports can play. We see, a decrease in teen pregnancy. We see, all these other healthy attributes, specifically when you look at young females and what sport can really do for them.
How are young girls participating in the game? How does that lead them to be future leaders of the world and their own community? Because the saying is, you empower a girl, you empower a full community. And what's the role that football and soccer plays in that?
Yeah, there was a study done by EY Ernst & Young where I believe it was 92% of all females in the C-suite, so CEOs, CMOs, COOs, played sports. And so to understand the leadership qualities that you can learn through sport, the testing that happens, you face so much adversity as well, and the decision making that you have to do, especially when you're on a team sport. You have so many different personalities. How are you going to navigate achieving this common goal with your teammates when you might have different backgrounds, or you might have different ways that you communicate, different ways that you process information, and that you're trying to work together? So how are you really going to navigate? I see you laughing. When you put a group of women together, strong, powerful, strong-willed women that are super hyper competitive, how are you really going to navigate the day to day and get on the same page, get on the, be the same team and come together despite your differences, right? And so understanding how to do that at a young age, and leadership skills are things that you need to practice, just like anything else. And so to see that statistic and understand that, now these women who are in the C-suite and running large organizations with, hundreds of people, these are the lessons that they learn through sport. And so for me to understand and see that, I would love to see essentially the Women's Sports Foundation out of business, because it's their goal to get as many girls, young girls, active into sport, because that's not an issue anymore, and I think that's the real problem. We want to see more youth getting involved in sport because of the development, personal development, and the growth that they can have, in an environment that's safe to practice things, that's safe to fail. You want to have an environment where it's okay to fail, but you can see a pathway to how to get better and improve the next practice or the next game, next training. So, definitely to have that opportunity and safe spaces to play and having the access is so critical for a young person.
I was laughing because I just remember some of our locker rooms where, I'm a bit louder than some. And yet, we competed against each other with Canada and USA, but then all of a sudden we're playing professionally together, and how we created such a tight bond, because to your point, we were going together in accomplishing something more, and to your point of what you said, I remember when people think I'm crazy when I say, especially to the next generation, like, failure is awesome, because you learn so much of yourself through failure. And in sport, you get to learn that. Like, for me, if I let a ball through my leg, I don't get to take that back. It's a goal. But I've learned through it, right? And it's the same for what you just said. There's so many powerful lessons that we learn in sport that we take to the life and to the boardroom. It's incredible. So what are the similarities, just to stay on that, between business leaders and sports management?
Just let's take that example right there. You're a goalkeeper. Ball goes through your legs. It didn't happen really ever in your
never against you.
That's true. And I never scored against you either, so we could make
sure. I'm glad you said it, not me.
But even just taking that example, right? And who knows, it could have been against, let's say it's in a World Cup, and that happens, or it just a friendly. But the responsibility that you then bear on your shoulders, if a mistake happens, right? And how your actions and how they implicate with the rest of the team, right? And the mental process that you have to go through to not stay down, to not let that take you out of the entire rest of the 85 minutes left to play, and how you're going to respond to mistakes, how you're going to respond to failure, how you will then take responsibility for actions, whether they're kind of your mistake or not, right? Owning responsibility and, you know, taking that on your shoulders and lifting those around you up. These are all the things that can happen, you know, and you can process within an instant of one decision or one mistake, right? You know, how you also handle success too. You know, we talk about failure a lot, but how do you handle success and the wins? You know, do you stay complacent?
You're hitting on so many key points, because one of our objectives with our women's strategy is to change perceptions and show the power of the game, and show pathways. And, you know, as you're speaking here, I'm sure everyone can now understand why we've had you come in and be one of our voices at our different programs. We've done the Next Play W, which was at the Women's Olympic Qualifiers in Los Angeles. And you got a chance to witness a little bit about what our confederation's like. It's 41 different realities in 41 different members associations, which some of you may understand it better as countries. But what were your takeaways from what you saw?
Yeah, and I love it too, because, you know, even following up from the last two questions, you know, you have variety and diversity in countries, right? You have so many different groups of people coming together, and again, power of sport. But I think my biggest takeaway was just physically seeing how many young girls were out there, and, you know, knowing how much hard work it was to put, you know, an event like that together, and knowing that there were probably thousands of other young girls who could have been there, right, if you know, given the opportunity to. But I mean, so many young girls who want to play, who are playing. And I think the kind of old saying, and actually I've heard it recently, is like, oh, well, we can't find the girls who want to play, or girls don't want to play sports, or, you know, it's not something that girls should play, or, you know, girls shouldn't play sport. You know, I think you talk about changing perception. That's just wrong, right? It's not a reality. I mean, there are girls that want to play. There are girls that are playing. There are hundreds and thousands of other young girls who want to play, given the right opportunity and chance. And so I think it's up to us to find them, to create those opportunities, to create the access. And that's just how we're going to evolve and develop this game and get better. You know, being able to provide those opportunities that we both had, you know, growing up, and just seeing the mass of smiling faces and just the excitement and the energy around it. I mean, that's what you want to see. That's what we're trying to create, right? It's so much fun. And yes, then you have the opportunities to grow and get better and perhaps play for your country one day, if that's a dream of yours. But we have to start from the ground level and create and instill that passion, you know, in these young girls' lives, so that they have a world to choose from. You know, they at least know that this is an option for them.
You hit it perfectly, because starting with our president, Victor Montagliani's access to the game, right? And we've created a new women's ecosystem where it will now we'll almost double the amount of games in a cycle for our members associations. And most importantly, they'll get to host home games. So for some of our members associations, they've never hosted a home game. You've traveled the world. You've won championships. You've lost. How important is it to be able to host an international game in your home country? You've been the guest, and I'm sure every time the United States came, it was a treat. But how important do you feel it is for young girls, again, to go back to see it and to believe it, but to be able to see an international game in their home country?
I mean, it's incredible. You know, it's special. Part of why I chose the college that I went to in university was so that my family could come see me play, you know, and making sure that that could be a reality, to have your family, your friends, your town, your communities behind you. And again, you talk about the power of sport, bringing communities together. I mean, that is just an energy that it's hard to replicate, you know, and I think that is the beauty and power of sport. And to be able to host, you know, especially at that level, another country into your own home country, right? I mean, there is something, you know, as a player, as an athlete, a competitor, you just can bring another level. You know, this is not just about the players. It's creating an opportunity for fans to get excited about rallying behind your home team. And so absolutely, I think that is such an important thing for every country and team to experience for so many beneficial factors.
Last question on kind of CONCACAF and its growth, because here you are, you're part of United States of America, World Cup champions many times over, most recently, of course. But how, because I know you're very committed to giving back to the game. And there's some athletes that are like, you know, well, once I'm done, but it's part of you, your DNA, because you feel like it's your responsibility to give to the game that's given to you. How can we replicate more of that throughout the region and our confederation, in your mind?
No, I think understanding that I had some really great opportunities and access in my life early on, I think that's part of why I feel responsibility. So we need to start doing that everywhere. You know, it can't just be, you know, one team or one area or one location. You know, as a sport collectively, you know, as we talk about the women's game, you know, every young girl needs to feel that and have that support. And I think that's where it starts. And, you know, everyone's different. You know, it's not necessarily for everybody to have that feeling of responsibility to continue to give back to their sport if they've been a professional. I think it's also part of something that we can instill culturally within teams, you know, in terms of that being part of your role. You know, I think it's something that sometimes we as women, we feel a responsibility to help other women. And so I think just like as, you know, other professional athletes and other international athletes, to also take that ownership as well. And to understand that, you know, we've all achieved in our lives because of other people. Yes, we've had to work hard. Yes, we've had to put in the work and go through the gruel and the grind, but we don't achieve success just by ourselves. And so I think once we realize that and we understand that, then we can start to peel back the layers of, you know, putting in the places of, yeah, this is probably a responsibility that you should start to take a little bit more, pay a little bit more attention to, and have that happen more organically as well.
Let's shift over to you becoming an owner of Angel City, expansion team coming in next year from Los Angeles. Talk a little bit about why that was important to you.
Yeah, I think one, it was cool, like to see this come full circle, right? To understand that I had just gotten into this sport purely because I loved it. My parents just kind of signed me up to get some energy out, you know, and to do something very positive and beneficial, but it hooked me. And so to be able to stay in sport in a different way, you know, I've done commentating after playing, but I'm always trying to figure out where is my best role to serve in this sport. And so to be able to have this opportunity presented, it's not something that, you know, happens all the time for people, especially, you know, people like us who've been players, especially women. So that was definitely important. And I think to be on a different, to be in a different role to develop the game and expand the great game even further. You know, I really feel like right now we are at this tipping point, you know, for women in football, especially, and girls in football. And I think we have a real opportunity to shift the narrative a little bit, to create more opportunity, to create parity, to create equity. And, you know, as we've talked about the power of sport, I mean, this is a sport that I know very well. So to use this platform to achieve much higher and greater, loftier goals, right? Not just to create the best soccer player, which obviously we want to do with Angel City, and develop the players, but to see what else we can do to impact the world. You know, as our founder and President Julie Ehrman has said, this is an organization that, yes, it has the football component to it, but it's, an impact organization that is trying to do things differently and shift, for greater good and impact in our communities. So to be a part of something that, again, is bigger than myself, that was a ride that I definitely want to jump on.
I love it how you said impact focused. You're looking at the first women's majority owned ownership group. Speak about how that's been received by the community.
I think it's been very positive. I think there's definitely an excitement around it, and to see the variety of ownership, from different industries, tech, sports, entertainment. And so it's bringing in new audiences as well to the sport, which is another way to grow the game. And to also be in a room and on, an investor call where I see other female faces, which, when you talk about boardrooms, when you talk about ownership, at this level, that is a rarity. And, I know I'm speaking the same language as you, and you have been in these situations, but we're typically the only female. We're typically the only, not just female, but person of color a lot of times when we're in these rooms. And so just to see that, there's just another energy and, I think awareness of what we're really trying to do when we're visibly able to see that. And you talked earlier about see it to believe it, as, a whole Billie Jean King thing as well, quote, but there is power in that. And so to be able to show and be visible, I think is another large component and factor of, what Angel City is trying to do. And so again, I think it's exciting and it's fun, which of course you want those elements to be there too. But yeah, we've got high goals. We're trying to make a difference. We're trying to be impactful, and we're trying to do a lot of good within the community. And it's been received very favorably so far.
Because I don't assume that people on the call know. Can you talk about who's on this ownership group? You have Natalie Portman. Can you just let people know how the worlds have come together from different aspects of life? Yeah, really kind of started with Natalie Portman, activist, and then she saw a U.S. team game out in Los Angeles, and basically it's like, we need to have a professional women's team here in Los Angeles. And so she spoke with Kara Nortman, who's a venture capitalist in the finance world. And so they started having conversations. They got Julie Ehrman on board to run the day-to-day and to head the whole initiative up. They also grabbed Alexis Ohanian, who is from the tech industry, them being very intentional about creating opportunities for women and girls in sport with their daughter as well. And so some really amazing, heavy hitters in terms of what they've already done, each respectively in their own industries, but being able to bring other people along. Uzo Aduba, another actor and a woman of color, Becky G, so, getting, again, the music industry, and just opening up the world to, diverse ownership. Obviously I'm one of 14 former U.S. women's national team players who've joined the ownership group as well. So we've got, the soccer players, Kobe Jones, Candace Parker. So, Billie Jean King, the list goes on in terms of the sports world, the entertainment world, the tech world, the finance world. And, the common thread really is, okay, let's get everybody together in a room. Let's share our networks. Let's share our experiences and our backgrounds to make this organization, one of the best that we possibly can to get out in the community, which is another thing I've been extremely impressed with Angel City is in terms of the intentionality and what they've said is important and one of their pillars from the very beginning. That was one of the first things I actually did, was going out to a community event in Los Angeles right from the beginning after the announcement of Angel City. So
It's not an organization that just says things to say it. The active component and the actionables that are happening have already been backed up. And so, again, high standards, very accomplished individuals as part of this ownership group, but just incredible to see how everybody is, trying to bring whatever they can to make things better.
I want you to answer this question. We're in the middle of a pandemic, social injustices, mother of two, owner. You've done so many things. I know this much to be true.
You always end with the hardest one. And then after the comment, I should have said this. And I know you love Oprah, and so I know she uses this too. But I know this to be true, that there are people who are working hard to make a difference, to create more, and that there are people who can be benefactors and on the receiving end of that. And so even though things can be challenging at times, I know that we can unite through the power of football and the power of sport to make these things better and to make them a reality.
Fantastic answer, as I know you would do. It's been such a pleasure to have a formal conversation with you, but I just want to thank you for all you've done for women in the game, women of color in the game, for just being a true role model to so many young girls, to myself, being a teammate of yours, but most importantly as a human being. You continue to give back to this game in incredible ways. I can't wait to see what happens next with you and your team. And you know what? Don't forget to mention how great Concacaf is always to everybody, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for all you do too. Victor was very wise in bringing you into the position that you are.